Hi, Barbara. Can you hear me? Can you see me? I'm not sure if I am in
Yes,
yet.
I can
Okay.
hear you and I can see you. Welcome.
Okay. Thank you so much. And thank you for the invitation.
Sure. Thank you.
Angie, I don't immediately see our timer app. Is that something I should be prepared to do manually?
She may have stepped away, but
I'm ready to do it manually if I have to.
okay, great. Thank you. We have a couple of more minutes here. Okay, I think we are ready to start. I think we're ready to start. We do have Mr. James Butler here, and we have at-large council member Robert White here. Thank you both for joining tonight. We do have an announcement that Mayor Muriel Bowser is expected to join us a little later. So hello and welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Barbara Rogers. I am the current president of the Lamond-Riggs Citizens Association. And I just want to tell you a little bit about LRCA for those of you all who are not familiar with the organization. LRCA was formed in 1948, which means that we will be celebrating 75 years of serving our community next year. The association is comprised of 18 executive board members, along with many paid members. Our association is very unique in that our boundaries, we cover residents in Ward 4 and residents in Ward 5. So I want to invite you to check out our website, which is lrcadc.org. And now at this time, I am going to pass the mic to Carmen Williams, president of the North Michigan Park Civic Association. Carmen.
Thank you, Barbara. Good evening, all. I am the current president of North Michigan Park Civic Association, which abuts Lamond-Riggs and also Queens Chapel and Brooklyn. So we kind of sit in the middle of everything in this upper Northeast corridor. We are part of Precinct 66, which is one of the largest voting precincts in the city. So good evening and welcome all candidates to the Northeast community of Lamond-Riggs and North Michigan Park. Why vote? Voting is an important part of our democracy. This process starts at the grassroots level. Grassroots movements, community groups such as civic and citizen associations encourage community members to contribute by taking responsibility and action for their community. Grassroots movement utilize a variety of strategies from fundraising and registering voters to simply encourage political conversation. Your vote for the mayoral candidate position is a leader we select and we hold accountable for maintaining and/or changes in our community. So we encourage all of those members within our communities to come out and vote for the changes. Thank you, and turn it back over to Barbara.
Yes, so good evening again. I will now introduce our moderator. Our moderator for tonight is David Trego. David is a resident of Riggs Park. David is also a trustee of LRCA. David brings years of moderating experience. So without further ado, please welcome David Trevo.
Thank you, Barbara, for the kind introduction, and welcome to our guests. I am very excited to moderate today's conversation, and I'd really like to second President Carmen's message about our civic duties. It is our voices and our choices that help shape our communities on everything from the parks we have and the places we live. Before we dive into the substance of today's forum, I'd like to get some of the ground rules out of the way here, both for our candidates and for the audience. These policies are designed to help us organize the conversation this evening so that residents can get detailed answers to their questions, and also so candidates can inform their constituents about where they stand on issues that are impacting us all. Our goal is to have a substantial conversation this evening, not to have a bunch of fireworks. Before I introduce the candidates, I'll go over what our format looks like this evening. Each candidate will get 3 minutes for an opening statement to introduce themselves. We will go in alphabetical order. Then I will begin asking questions from our residents. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond. If their words or record are directly referenced, I will facilitate a 1-minute rebuttal. At the end of the evening, candidates will get 2 minutes to make a closing statement in reverse order. In order to keep track of the times, we have a digital clock available so all candidates can see how much time they have left. Can you all give me a quick confirmation that that's visible and ready for you? Thank you, Robert. The questions for tonight's event come from residents from our respective associations and will address the issues of both citywide and community importance. My goal is to get to as many resident questions as possible tonight. For the awareness of our candidates and our attendees, this forum is being recorded and live streamed on social media and YouTube. For our attendees who don't get a chance to submit a question beforehand, there's a Q&A feature on the Zoom platform that will allow you to submit one live tonight. I will try to get to some of these submissions and cover as many areas as possible while also keeping the conversation flowing. Now you've heard enough from me, and I would like to turn the floor over to James Butler to introduce himself. As President Rogers said, the mayor will be joining us later this evening, and we will allow her an introductory statement when she arrives.
And good evening, everyone, and thank you, David. I want to also thank Barbara and Carmen, and I want to thank the Lamond-Riggs Civic Association or Citizens Association and the North Michigan Park Civic Association. Thank you for all that you do to further the ends of democracy. As was mentioned, I am James Butler, and I am running to be the district's 8th mayor. I am a proud Washingtonian residing right here in Ward 5. I am a former ANC commissioner, former civil rights lawyer. I have sued state governments, city governments, municipalities. I want to say this because it's really important right now. I have fought for fairness and equality my entire adult life, and I will do it until the day I die. DC needs a fighter, a real change agent. Every single metric in this city has gone in the opposite direction. We are seeing city officials running for the office of mayor using flowery language like, our city has failed us. And they're absolutely right. And I am proud to be the only non-career politician running for the office of mayor. Folks, my first priority as mayor of this great city will be to restore hope and a sense of public safety. Folks right now do not feel safe in this city, and I will ensure DC is one of the safest cities in America. We will not only focus on the root of the problem, that is kids getting into trouble, young adults getting in trouble, by bolstering the Marion Berry Summer Youth Program to be a year-round program, ensuring that they pay a minimum wage, ensuring that our rec centers are 24 hours a day, safe passage centers for young adults and single adults and kids, of course. This will be like a resource center so that people have places and things to do and a place to go when they don't feel safe, focusing on crime. But at the same time, I am not a defund the police Democrat. I will put more police officers on the streets. I will form a special gun unit to work with our gun recovery unit to seize illegal guns coming from Maryland, Virginia, and other jurisdictions. I will work with the ATF and our other federal partners to seize illegal ghost guns and make them a thing of the past. And I will review with our courts the loitering that happens on our streets so that we can approach it in restorative and constitutional ways. We will also ensure that we focus on deeply affordable housing by taking the bold steps of ensuring that we change the formula of calculating AMI. We will ensure that we stop relying on private developers for all of our affordable housing and go into our own city stock, bring rent control. We will also ensure that we go into the city's housing stock to tackle our homeless situation. In addition, with regards to our homelessness, we will ensure that shelters and transitional housing is not something we rely solely on, but we can rely more on permanent supportive housing with a robust wraparound service and ensure that our schools are making the grades. This is the type of hard stuff in democracy that we will do, that career politicians could never do or see. They've stayed there too long. Their vision of the possibilities of this city has been stifled because they learned how to say no by staying in office year after year after year. It is time that we clean house and get a fresh perspective for this city that will restore hope, that will restore safety, that will make the city deeply affordable. And folks, I am prepared for the task. There is no man or woman running for this office that will serve you and the interests of this city with more passion, with more vigor, with more energy, with more hope than I share with you today. I yield the balance of my time to my opponent.
Thank you, James. Robert, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, David, for hosting. Thank you to North Michigan Park and Lamond-Riggs residents. I'm Robert White. I'm an at-large council member, a fifth-generation Washingtonian, and more importantly, a husband and a father. I've spent my life overcoming obstacles. Like so many people who grew up in DC, I come from a family that has struggled to get by generation after generation, and I grew up in a city where I saw a level of violence that no young person should have to see, but unfortunately, we're starting to see again. Now, my life took a pivotal and difficult turn when I was young. When I was 8 years old, I lost my mom to breast cancer, and just a few weeks after that was in a near-fatal car accident that left me out of school so long that I couldn't catch up. I failed every single grade from third grade through 10th grade. But 10 years after my 10th grade guidance counselor told me that I would never go to college because so many people labeled me a troublemaker and treated me as if I would not succeed, 10 years after that, I was a lawyer sitting beside Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton fighting for our city. Since that time, I've worked in all three branches of government. I've worked for federal and local government, and I have used the skills as a problem solver to deliver for our residents. To go from where I was to where I am now, I had to learn how to become a problem solver. That is the skill set that I brought for DC residents on Capitol Hill, that I brought for DC residents in the Office of the Attorney General, and that I brought for DC residents in the council. When I ran for the council, I said straight out what I would focus on: education, housing, jobs, and returning citizens. And I've delivered for my fellow residents. On education, I helped pass the most sweeping and expansive early childhood education bill in the country. To support returning citizens, I have doubled the size of the agency that serves returning citizens, created numerous new opportunities from transportation to identification to housing, and I've made the District of Columbia the first jurisdiction in the nation to restore voting rights to all incarcerated people. On housing, I've thought outside the box. I've pushed us to convert office buildings into workforce and affordable housing. I've created housing covenants so that we can create affordable housing across our city as quickly as we can sign contracts. And I passed a bill that so many DC residents asked for that holds developers accountable for the promises that they make when they get taxpayer money. On the workforce, I've created opportunities for people with the steepest barriers to employment, including senior citizens, veterans, and returning citizens. But I've also realized that we need a problem solver as mayor. Now, when the mayor joins us, you're going to hear her talk a lot about money that she spent. But most of us know that spending money and solving problems are not the same thing. The mayor will talk about the amount of money that she spent, but we are looking at our families and our communities and knowing that that money is not reaching everyday people. After 8 years, crime is on the rise. After 8 years of Mayor Bowser in office, over 60% of Black and Brown students are behind grade level. After 8 years under Mayor Bowser, the District of Columbia is losing population faster than any state, and parents are fleeing our city. The mayor wants to stick on the status quo, but I come from a family and a community of people who cannot afford the status quo anymore, because too often there are winners and there are losers, and we are frequently the losers. I have delivered on my promises. I've solved solutions in our city, big and small, and that is what I'm going to do as mayor. That is the type of leadership that we need now in this challenging time in our city. The mayor has no plan to make us safer. I have a real public safety plan that I've developed with the foremost experts across the country. I have a plan to improve our schools, not just for some students, but for all students. Because after 8 years, so many of us are still looking for the Alice deal for all that the mayor promised 8 years ago, and she still has no plan. On our workforce, I have a real plan to get people to work, because native Washingtonians and young people are tired of watching a city with an economy revving on all engines, but so many of us cannot find a way to plug in because we have not had a champion in the office of mayor. When I am mayor, you're going to see hope. You're going to see real ideas. You're going to see no more gimmicks. We're not going to change from the color green and the green team to a purple team. We are going to be allies across our city, setting real goals, solving real problems. We are tired of the press releases and the gimmicks. We need a mayor who is actually going to solve problems. That is what I've done as a council member. That is what I will do as mayor. That is why I'm asking for your vote to be the next mayor of the District of Columbia. Thank you.
Thank you for that, for those opening statements, gentlemen. My beginning questions are going to ask you to think a little broader about the role of mayor. As Washingtonians, as you know, we live in the core of an extended metro area that goes into Virginia and Maryland. Residents of these communities, including both represented here tonight, often cross Eastern Avenue during their everyday lives. My grocery store even is in Maryland. So my first question is, as mayor, what will you do to foster relationships and further collaboration with our neighboring jurisdictions? And that question will go to Councilman White.
Thank you, David. Thank you for the question. I'm assuming that you go to the Giant that I used to shop at. So I'm going to do as a mayor what I've done as a council member. And frankly, if we had a mayor who worked collaboratively, you would be amazed at how much more progress we would make. In my first 3 years on the council, I was elected twice to chair the Regional Council of Governments, elected by elected officials across our region. What I did was take a leadership role to solve issues in Metro, to set regional housing goals, and to push us forward as a region on health disparities. That is the type of leadership that I will show as mayor. When I worked on Capitol Hill, I've collaborated with offices across our country to address major issues. And not for nothing, as mayor, I will also work with the council and with our advisory neighborhood commissioners. I will be a collaborative mayor, something that we have not had in 8 years.
Mr. Butler?
David, thank you. And first, I would ask that you keep all your dollars in DC. I'm joking a little bit, but I do focus on that. But I do believe a good mayor, and I as mayor will focus on collaborating and ensure that we have strong, seamless, and a continuity amongst the governors of the two neighboring states. We collaborated, and I will give the mayor accolades for collaborating during COVID, but we're not collaborating on issues when it comes to crime, when it comes to housing, when it comes to our transportation infrastructure. Just like we collaborated when there was this national pandemic, I, as your mayor, will ensure that we double up and collaborate when it comes to affordable housing. When I say that I will make DC one of the safest cities in America, we know crime doesn't have any borders, and frequently crime in Maryland doesn't stay there. I will ensure that we work with local law enforcement and ensure that this region becomes one of the safest regions in the country.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. As you know, the mayor of Washington is an executive. They lead a number of agencies, they have a large budget and an even larger staff of city employees. They also represent the city on a number of federal issues and in a number of federal forums. My first question in this area is, what can you tell us about your management style and your leadership skills?
And I assume that goes to me, David. I have owned, and I think I'm one of the only candidates to enjoy having owned and run several businesses. I have hired people. I have, paid their salaries. Some successful, some not. And I have always led microscopically. I have had some tough experiences in my life early on as a young lawyer that have taught me to be very microscopic with my oversight. And I will say, I started a law practice at 27 years old. I was not as successful as I would have liked to be. But what that has taught me is deep oversight when you are managing and hiring a lot of people, and when you are traversing the country. And certainly as mayor of DC, that is the case. But oversight and microscopic oversight is the key with every agency, with every deputy mayor, with every department head. I can assure you microscopic oversight will be an integral part of my administration.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. Councilman White?
Thank you, David. This is key. Look, good leaders create other leaders. We don't need anybody who needs to hog the spotlight. The second thing I will do is empower our workforce. My workforce in the District of Columbia will see our clear goals coming from the mayor and from our agency heads, but we will create our goals collaboratively so that we are getting buy-in in our agencies. When you get buy-in from employees, they work better, they work more efficiently. So we are going to improve efficiency of government in a way that we have not done in decades. Very importantly, for all DC residents, I'm going to bring in the best and brightest to lead our agencies, not political cronies, not yes people, the best and brightest who know how to manage, who know how to get things done, who will roll up their sleeves to work with me to accomplish the goals that we have set in this campaign. Finally, my administration and my leadership style will revolve around accountability and transparency, because that is what DC residents need. Watch the difference in what we get done in my administration versus what you see now with widespread inefficiency.
Thank you, Councilman White. As you may have noticed, our time has been running a little faster than I had announced, and we're going to shift to a 2-minute timer for our following questions. So you'll be able to take a deep breath there. I do want to actually follow up on that last statement. Many of our residents wrote in asking about essentially talent acquisition. How are you going to attract those leaders, those managers, the talented, ethical people we need in public service? So Councilman White, back to you, since you already started talking about it.
Residents are asking the right question. This is what I am here for. This is the time for the type of leadership that I'm going to provide. Let us be honest. The best and brightest are not going to work for a third-term mayor who is not accomplishing major goals. The best and brightest are going to work for an innovative mayor who wants to be ambitious and who is setting goals, who is operating a government focused on accountability and transparency and goal setting. We need people who know how to manage. We need people who know how to run agencies. What we don't need is what we have now, with agency directors running double duty, running multiple large agencies, out of control government. We need a mayor who knows how to get the workforce moving. That means that we have managers who know how to manage good talent. Talented people are not staying around for political cronies. They're not staying around in an administration that doesn't know how to manage well. If we want to move our city forward, if we want to get rid of the inefficiency in our government, we have got to change leadership. This is a different city than we had 8 years ago. 8 years ago, maybe slogans and politics would get the job done, but right now we have real problems. Crime is out of control. Our schools have not improved, and we are watching our city become less and less affordable every single day. And the mayor has no answers, just slogans and yes people across government. We need the leader of every agency to know how to run that agency, not be someone who can't criticize their boss. Speaking to wrap this up and speaking to the last question as well, we need a leader who can take criticism. I don't need a team of people who tell me my ideas are good. I need a team of people how to tell me how to make my ideas better.
To you, Mr. Butler.
I want to say it does scare me when I hear someone, elected official, talk about hiring the best and brightest, because I'm reminded of a presidential administration that made that promise that I wasn't too happy with when they said they'd hire the best and the brightest. I'm not saying that to elicit a response, but saying that my approach will be different. Certainly it will be to hire very bright people in talent, but I will look at DC as a first source for hiring talent. I believe, and I've talked with numerous residents in the district over the last several years. I think most of you viewing this know that I challenged the mayor in 2018, coming in second in the Democratic primary with a little bit over 10% of the vote, as relatively unknown. But people were showing that they wanted a change then, even more so now. We're seeing some of the informal polling really moving in our favor, and we're excited about that, the momentum we're getting. But I will say this, as I transverse this great city, residents are telling me, why do we have to go to Seattle to hire this person, or this part of the country to hire that person? We've got adequate talent right here in our own backyard. And I will ensure that every time we're looking for an agency head, or a deputy mayor, that talent comes right from home, because that's most important to district residents. I have listened and I am prepared to act on what district residents have asked for as your mayor. Not just simply feeding you the best and the brightest, but I'm telling you how we're going to do it. We're going to focus on our talent at home to ensure that we get the best talent from here. And if we're unable to find DC as the first source of that talent, we will move on about the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. My next set of questions is going to fall into the broad category of public health and wellness. As you know, we have been experiencing several waves of the COVID-19 pandemic. We happen to be on computers instead of over at LaSalle or UDC, where we were originally planning this event. My first question is, as this pandemic hopefully becomes more endemic, how will you make decisions when it comes to public health challenges that might emerge in the future? So, Mr. Butler, to you.
Thank you. One thing I and my administration will always do, and I want you to be clear, I will not equivocate about this whatsoever. We will follow the science. We will follow the science. Now, what we are focusing on and what we have been talking and consulting with experts on is we have made a pledge to try as best as possible with following the science to work where we do not need to shut the government down again. We understand that having a pandemic, and I believe we have essentially, based on some of the experts, moved out of a pandemic phase, but I'm hopeful we stay in that phase. But one thing I am, I do understand that we will live with COVID for the likely future. And so that concerns me with regards to our schools. And we need to monitor when numbers rise. We need to do things like ensure that our HVAC system is upgraded to HEPIC systems where we can ensure that people are safe during the courses, spikes, and when it ebbs and flows, that we can still function as a city. We also need to be sure that spaces, small businesses like restaurants, have the adequate spaces, have a permit process that's streamlined so they can have outdoor space when our numbers do spike, so that we can still enjoy our city without shutting down, without causing and decimating small businesses where they never come back. We're going to ensure that we follow the science, folks, but we're going to also ensure that as best as possible, we function in our daily lives, our small businesses, and our schools, so that DC acts and operates as the world-class city that it is, and hopefully soon to be the 51st state.
Councilman White.
Thank you for the question. As we hopefully move toward the other side of this pandemic, and we know that this is going to take this pandemic has taken a significant toll. We have seen sickness. So many of us have lost loved ones. We have been challenged in our careers. As the parent of two young kids, I can tell you parents are tired and struggling, and so many of our professionals have struggled during a very, very difficult time, few more than our educators. As mayor, I'm going to follow the science at all times, but I'm going to make sure that we have an incredibly talented and well-rounded team. That's something actually I've done even as a candidate. I've put together panels of experts that included physicians, pediatricians, infectious disease experts, and psychologists, because all of these are different aspects of the pandemic, and we need to go into each phase, each day, with a full understanding. But the other thing I didn't just rely on medical doctors. I pulled together groups of parents, of teachers, of frontline workers to make sure that the professional advice was not out of touch with the everyday challenges of the people that I represent. That is the type of collaborative and well-rounded solution-oriented work that you should expect from me as mayor. What we have seen over the pandemic are the council and the executive coming together, but we have seen too many people, too many voices that were not heard through the executive because they didn't have open lines of communication. We need a mayor who is in touch with everyday people, with the challenges that everyday people have, so that the solutions are in line with those communities and with those challenges.
I appreciate that both of you mentioned education in your response, because that is a great segue to our next question. As you know, many businesses and DCPS have moved to a mask optional policy as we have moved into the spring here. However, some charter schools in the city still require masks for the children in the classroom. What is your position on these schools breaking with DCPS and DC health guidance? That'll be to the councilman.
Thank you, David. I want, as a leader, for none of us to pretend that the pandemic is easy or that the challenges are easy. And this is a time, though, that we need a leader who can pull us together. So I as a parent, I'll tell you, my masks are optional in DC public schools. As a DC public school parent, I talk to my daughters about it, but we still wear masks. If that is what the science says, then that's what I think everyone should do. This is also a reason that we need to make sure we have a leader who listens and who has the trust of communities across the city. Because as we face these challenges, and we need people to lean in together, to row in the same direction, that only happens if we have a leader who is working with people, who has the leadership style that I bring. So do I think that all students in all aspects of the school system should wear a mask? That is something that we're going to listen to our public health experts on. So right now, DC public schools and most charter schools have masks optional. Some charter schools are requiring masks. I believe that the government should set the floor, but it is okay if other schools want to set a higher ceiling. I think that's absolutely acceptable.
Thank you, Councilman. Mr. Butler?
David, I will make a pact with you and the public that I will never equivocate when answering your questions. I have talked about this at some other forums, that I believe there should be continuity amongst DC public charter schools and DC public schools, where they work on the same calendar, et cetera, et cetera. That would allow these types of problems to be avoided. And so let me say without equivocation, as mayor, I have the scenario right in front of me so I can answer the question. Right now, you ask what's happening, what would I do? So I'm going to answer your question. I would ensure that all DC public charter schools wear masks and DC public school students wear masks. Plain, simple. You're not going to hear me equivocate.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. As you may know, many of the residents of the communities represented here today are seniors. Many residents have asked, what will you do in your next hypothetical administration to support elder care? To you, Mr.
Assume that's for me, David. Okay, thank you so much. I have had the pleasure of almost being in every senior home in DC, delivering food and those sorts of things. So I've got, over the last roughly 8 years, a lot of experience talking with our seniors in the city. One thing that I'm always hearing is that affordable housing and healthcare are the two primary issues on their concerns. One of the biggest issues is to make sure that our seniors, especially even those in 55 and older homes, can afford to live in those homes. That's why I'm proposing, as your next mayor, that we change the formula on what is deeply affordable housing. Right now, we use a formula called AMI, which is HUD's formula, or MFI. They're used interchangeably. And the problem with that formula is it's a calculation, a regional formula that really calculates the counties that we're surrounded by. The problem with that is we're surrounded by some of the richest counties in America. I, as your mayor, I will abort using HUD's formula and adopt our own localized formula. Nothing in the law prevents us literally from right now adopting our own localized formula that will provide deeply affordable housing, not only for folks in general, but especially for our seniors. We will ensure that those seniors that are risk losing their homes through tax liens, get a reprieve from the city where they no longer have to pay those taxes. It's not a lot, but it's a lot to them. If a senior's ready to lose their generational home, this is the type of hard stuff in democracy that we must do, that very few people that have spent multiple years in office will actually do, because they'll tell you that we cannot do it. But we must focus on those hard things. We must ensure that there's adequate health care, free health care for those seniors, bus rides, those sorts of things will continue as well.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. To the councilman.
Thank you very much. Our seniors need a significant amount of support. We are a quickly aging city, which is a wonderful thing, because people want to age in place in their homes. They want to feel like they still belong in the city and see a city that recognizes them. The thing I hear most from seniors is concern about housing. So as mayor, I'm going to expand housing opportunities for our seniors, particularly the seniors in this very large middle income gap. Seniors who have lower incomes, we have some programs for them, and we need to continue to support them. And seniors who are wealthy are doing okay and don't need much help from us. But that middle is so big, and seniors are falling through the cracks. The next thing I know is that seniors need more transportation options, because seniors today are very active, but we need to make sure they have the transportation to get around the city. We need to have daily activities for our seniors, expand what's happening in our senior wellness centers, and make sure we have a senior wellness center in every ward. We need to expand local funding for home care, because many of our seniors do need care, but that care is expensive. That means that the government has to step up to make sure our seniors can be taken care of in the way they need, and that they can age in place. Finally, as mayor, I will empower the Office on Aging to make sure that we are getting constant feedback from seniors about what services they need that they don't have and where they need us to improve. So this will be an administration that pays close attention to our seniors, that makes sure we are paying them the respect and dignity that they deserve as they age in place in a city that, frankly, they held down when so many people didn't want to be here.
Thank you, Councilman. One of DC's greatest features, and this is certainly true in the neighborhoods represented here tonight, is our parks and green spaces. So my first question is, what is your approach to expanding and improving the green spaces in our city? To the councilman.
Thank you for the question. I spend a lot of time, particularly with my daughters, out in the parks and our green spaces, taking walks. And we're not unique in that respect. We have a city full of people who love the outdoors and who want to enjoy it. And we know what the outdoors, green space and parks provide to our quality of life. That has been a priority for me. That is one of the reasons why the DC Sierra Club has endorsed me in this race, as they did in my last two races. I have, as a council member, I have as a congressional staffer, protected our parks and green spaces, and I will do that. But I will also make sure that we don't overdevelop, so that our communities have places to go. Look at Ivy City as an example. They have in the center of their community, the Cromell School, which is a space that could be a wonderful recreation space, a community center, and a green space. But those residents have been fighting year after year after year against the government to protect that green space. And I have been fighting with them. We need a mayor who understands the importance, the balance, to make sure that we have green space for people to enjoy, both young and old. We're not quite there yet. We need a mayor who is going to focus on people and communities more than developers. That is the only way we create and maintain the amount of green space and recreation space that we need. That is not what we've seen.
Thank you, Councilman. Mr. Butler, I'm going to ask you to pause your answer to this question as we welcome Mayor Bowser to the forum this evening. Mayor Bowser, we have been just started our conversation here, and we have given each candidate 5 minutes to introduce themselves at the beginning, and I'd like to afford you that time now.
Well, thank you, David, and good afternoon, good evening, I should say, to everybody in North Michigan Park and in Lamond-Riggs. I'm happy to be with you. And as I thought about what I would say this evening, I realized that I've spent 40 of all of my years living in not all of my years, but most of my years living in North Michigan Park or living in Riggs Park. And I'm also very grateful to the people of Riggs Park who have trusted me from the very beginning to lead and trusted me to work on the issues that affect our communities the most. I was first elected in Riggs Park in 2004. I served as an ANC commissioner. I had the privilege of representing Ward 4 on the council for almost 8 years. And I have had the privilege of being the mayor of my hometown for almost 8 years as well. I'm very proud of the work that we've done together between Lamond-Riggs and North Michigan Park on issues that we decided on together. I am proud to have worked with my neighbors as an ANC commissioner with our Citizens Association and also with the Lamond-Riggs Development Task Force. And when I look around Riggs Park now and Lamond-Riggs and the North Michigan Park communities, all of the major projects that we decided on together are either done or they're on their way to being done. And that work started with conversations with neighbors who were tired of the Tiger Market there that was selling more liquor and lottery tickets than food. Traffic, making our community unsafe. They were tired of undelivered promises on a recreation center, a ball field at the school. And so that's how we transformed and delivered affordable housing and jobs and recreation, and very soon a brand new library. So that is the type of leader that I am. I work collaboratively with neighbors, with elected officials to get things done. I have a record of service. And so I learned a while back while serving as your ANC commissioner on ANC 4B, I was at a forum and a woman named Dodie Butler pulled me to the side after the meeting. And she said, Muriel, I really like you. You're very articulate. You have great ideas, but you were just complaining too much. And that's not why you were elected. And so as I've been coming to forum after forum, talking to DC residents, that's what I hear from my opponents, constant complaining, especially from people who are elected in positions of influence, who can implement their ideas right now, today, but haven't done so. And so what I know we need now, that we have come together and we have getting over this pandemic because we've stuck together, is we have to have a proven leader who can focus on the big ideas that are facing us. And those ideas include how we get our children caught up after being at home for more than 2 years in some cases and get them back on track. How do we help our small businesses get back on track? Some of them were completely wiped out by this pandemic. How do we reimagine and re-enliven our downtowns and commercial corridors and get jobs back and get people back to work? That's the type of work that we have to do now. You know what you get with me, a battle-tested leader that has fought back against bullies like Donald Trump, a battle-tested leader that has gone to the Congress to make sure that we get all of the money that we are owed. $750 million we were slighted during the pandemic. You know that you will get a leader who can make tough decisions and not shy away from them, not equivocate about them, but tell you the cold hard facts. And at the end of the day, make the best decisions for the most people. I want to thank you for trusting me, and I want to ask you for your help again. I'm going to be in the Democratic primary, and I need your vote by June the 21st.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser. We will now return to the question for the mayor. I didn't know exactly when he came in. We're talking about the city's green spaces and plans to support and improve parks and the like. I will send the question to Mr. Butler and then to you.
Well, let me clarify the record. I just want to clarify in the mayor's story that Dodie Butler is no relation to me. So let's be clear, not a relative of mine whatsoever. But at any rate, as I transverse the entire city, this was not so when I challenged the mayor in 2018. I am hearing literally 9 out of 10 residents say, Mr. Butler, what's happening to the green space? We have no green space in our city. The green space, folks, have been replaced by cranes because this mayor in particular has cozied with developers. And that's a problem. It's a problem when you have this close nexus with developers. And now, it's going to be hard to reverse the lack of progress that we've made. We have a city that's a cement block, basically, and very little green space. What I will do as your mayor is to make a pact with the public to ensure that the green space that we have left, Cromell Park, every other green space that we have, we will ensure that we get the public's input prior to talking and cozying up with developers about developing it into something that is non-useful as green space by the public. That's what has happened for the past 8 years. That's what has gotten us to this conversation right now because of this close relationship with developers that have hurt the public. So if you're asking about green space, you need to ask the present leadership, why don't we have any green space? And what she's going to do in her last days to preserve the green space that we have.
Mayor Bowser, the question is to you.
Well, I just want to inform everybody listening that just last week we were named the #1 city for parks in the United States of America. We have green spaces to be proud of, and I'm very proud of the work that DPR has made and our partnerships with communities to enliven our green spaces, to invest in fields, to invest in playgrounds, and to invest in all of the programming that happens there. I'm very proud that we were able to transform one of our federal parks downtown, which I think can be a model for other passive or underutilized parks. Franklin Park that I'm talking about, and it's going to allow us, can you not hear me? It is going to allow us to bring more people and activities in the downtown. We're also very proud of our investments in fields at RFK Stadium. That is going to allow us to have more family events, and it's also a model for more recreation space that we can do at RFK. Right in Riggs Park, I am proud of the investments that we have been able to make at Riggs LaSalle, including the field, including playground space there as well. So we have been able to make a lot of investments. We have a beautiful federal park right in the heart of at Lamond-Riggs and where North Michigan Park meet. That is a nice passive space that is used for family events in the line. So our team has been focused on how we can not only focus on our local parks, but getting back more of our federal space.
Mayor Bowser, I'm glad you mentioned that park between North Michigan and the Metro. I would like to ask a follow-up here. So this will be a 1-minute response for all of the candidates. Residents have some particular concerns about the unpaved path that many use to commute home from the Metro to North Michigan Park. What could you, in your next term, do to make this a safer way home for folks at night?
Well, I was actually talking about the park that is between Bacchus and the neighborhood that is wooded in some places and flat in others. I assume that you're talking about between the Metro and the Salt Dome. Okay. As a person who I hope my parents aren't hearing this, but as a teenager, I walked through that unpaved, unsafe place to get from my house to the Red Line on a daily basis. And so I recognize that people use it. It cuts off a lot of minutes of commuting time, but we do want people to be safe and stick to well-lit areas. I can, and if it has continues to rise as a concern in the community, we can look for ways to improve it and work with the Park Service to do that.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser. We'll go to the councilman next.
Thank you. Yeah, my trails are some of the ones that have created that pedestrian path, that unofficial pedestrian path that is there right now. A couple things we'll do. One, I'll work with the National Park Service to create permanent lighting there, because we know that folks are still going to continue to use that trail. But I'll also work with the National Park Service to get it paved. I believe, based on the work I've done with the National Park Service over the years, that if the District of Columbia is willing to pay for it, that they will go for it. They'll have to go through their federal processes, but we can work through those processes. And it's not a significant amount of funding. I think the biggest lift there will just be coordinating with our federal partners. And that's something that I have a ton of experience doing.
Mr. Butler?
Thank you, David. I noticed the mayor said, if it becomes a concern. Well, it wouldn't be a question if it wasn't a concern. So what we need is a mayor that will actually listen to what the people are asking for and act with immediacy. That's why I have said my number one focus will be to make DC one of the safest cities in America. Under this present mayor, when I challenged her in 2018, I told the city, if she gets another 4 years, you're going to see crime at a 20-year high, and that's when we're there right now. If she gets another 4 years, and I hate to say this, we are likely to see a 30-year high on crime. That's a fact. And so you have to ask yourself, do you want to take that risk, or do you want to take the risk with my other two opponents who have been heavy on defunding the police, stripping our public safety budgets, and essentially decriminalizing everything that has come across their desk? It's time we clean house and get rid of these career politicians and make this city safe.
David, if you wouldn't mind, may I jump in?
I actually have a follow-up that I think will certainly allow you to do that. We have a resident who was asking live for the candidates also to comment about the improvements to the Fort Circle Park at South Dakota and Galloway, which is part of the neighborhood's development plan. So I'd like to give each candidate, starting with you, Mayor Bowser, to discuss that.
Thank you for that. And I did want to respond to some questions about having lights installed and working with the National Park Service, because I believe I'm likely the only person on this call who's actually done it. We have worked with the Park Service on any number of projects, on cooperative management agreements to get things done. We were able to do it in Petworth. We will continue to work with them on the parts of Fort Totten that impact the Metropolitan Branch Trail as well. And so that's, I have an actual record of delivering lighting projects with the National Park Service. More than that, we just advanced formed 75,000 streetlights in a public-private partnership across the District of Columbia, which will give us the opportunity to better light trails and include in those projects what we will propose to the National Park Service as well. The Fort Circle system, I was referring to that park earlier, and I will want to work very closely with the community on what their priorities for that park are.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser. Mr. Butler.
Just want to be very clear for the record that I have and continue to nearly on a weekly basis for the last couple of years working with the Park Service, and have accomplished a great deal actually right in Ward 4 where this forum is taking place. I'm sitting, of course, in Ward 5. We've accomplished a lot with regards to the reopening of our national treasurer, the Carter Baron. So I don't believe that's an accurate statement that the mayor is the only one on the call. But I do want to say this also with regards to Fort Circle Park. I believe that it's an imminent concern of residents. I don't know what every concern is, neither am I going to get on this forum and express and act as if I do know what those concerns are. But as I stated with regards to the last question, I will always take those concerns seriously and act upon them with a level of immediacy. And that's what I will do here. So I am willing to, even while we're on the campaign trail, meet with those residents within the next week or within this week, whenever they'd like to see me, talk about what their issues are and see how we can address those concerns with immediacy. We can't continue to have the type of leadership that's going to push things to the back burner when the public is yelling, it's a problem. That's the problem you get with career politicians. They always say, have learned over the years how to say no instead of seeing the possibilities of saying yes. How can we say yes and get things done with immediacy? That's the experience that I have with working in the private sector that has taught me how to move things along with immediacy.
And to the councilman.
Thank you. Mayor Bowser is wrong. I have, as somebody who has worked in the federal government, there's no one running for mayor who has worked with the National Park Service more than I have, or between the National Park Service and the District of Columbia. In fact, one of the things I've done between the National Park Service and DC government is get lighting on federal parks, on federal parks in DC because of public safety issues. I've also worked with the National Park Service and the District of Columbia government on land transfers, on flood mitigation, and on many other things. That is one of the benefits of having a mayor who has worked in all three branches of government, for federal and local government, is because I know the potential if we have the right leader. With respect to the Fort Circle Park, this one in particular that you speak of, I am so excited every time I'm driving down the road, particularly on the weekends now. I see more and more people using this park than I did growing up. It used to just be me and my brother throwing a football around across the street from Fort Totten. But now we see our parks being used in a new way. And we want to work with the neighborhood first and with the federal parks and with the National Park Service to make sure our parks are meeting their full potential. I don't want to speak for our residents, and I think that every community wants something a little bit differently. But if we have a mayor who is in the community drawing out the solutions, that is how we create the maximum opportunity in our parks. But that's also how we deliver the best results for our residents. The best ideas are not coming from the Wilson Building. The best ideas are coming from our communities. One of the major differences that residents will see with me as mayor is you will see me listening to you before we take action. Because right now we're spending millions of dollars on program after program. We're going into your community with these things, and put the mayor's name on it, telling you what you're going to get, instead of asking the community, what is it you need? What is it that we can support, and getting those supports to communities.
Thank you, Councilman. I think it's fitting that our conversation about green spaces also started wandering into public safety, which will be our next topic for the next few questions. To Mr. Butler, one of the most active committees in the LRCA is our Public Safety Committee, chaired by our ANC member, Loretta Huff. And, you know, the citywide crime statistics were brought up in the opening statement. This is an area I know of some divergence between the candidates. So I'd like to ask a two-part question here, and I'll spread these out so you have a chance to answer both. But firstly, what structural investments would you make to address public safety long-term in the next administration?
Thank you, and thank you, Commissioner Huff, for all that you do in the city to further the ends of democracy as well. I appreciate your work. With regards to structural changes, I just want a little bit of clarity, David, on the question. When you speak of structural, are you speaking of in our public safety apparatus, or is a little bit ambiguous to me?
Trying to think long-term instead of in the first 100 days.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And if I can you can be generous on the time there. With regards to, I've said it before, we will make DC one of the safest cities in America. We're moving for 700 additional police officers within my first 4 years. We are also moving for and gun interdiction unit to work with the current gun recovery unit that will have no less than 100 police officers charged with interdicting guns that come in from Maryland, Virginia, or any other place in the country that would someone would want to do harm with an illegal gun. In addition to that, we will work with the ATF and our federal partners to ensure that ghost guns are illegalized, and those purveyors of the framing of ghost guns, the parts of ghost guns, those that would disseminate components of ghost guns in any way to do us harm will be punished at the highest level. I have said this before, and I'll say it again. It's important that we also review with DC Superior Court and our federal courts for restorative and constitutional ways to look at our loitering issue in the city. One, we know that lots of crime festers from the loitering. Sometimes they operate as open air drug markets, and oftentimes the petty beefs erupt from that too. I've said it at the beginning, but we will not ignore the root cause of these issues either. We will also make sure that the Marion Barry Summer Youth Program is a year-round program, paying a minimum wage. In addition to that, our rec centers need to operate as world-class rec centers, open 24 hours a day, like we see in New York City, acting as safe passageways for those young students and then also single parents. That is what's important to me, to make sure we have the infrastructure to operate like a world-class center and soon to be the 51st state.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. I do appreciate the grace period there to clarify the question, but I do want to remind our candidates in general that we want to keep to the clock. This question now to the mayor.
So thank you for the question. So you talked about structural investments, and I do think there are some things structurally that will improve public safety in the district long term. But I also know right now, people want to make sure that we're acting urgently and that we have all the tools that we need. You've heard me state unequivocally that we need to hire more officers. We haven't been able to hire more officers for the last 2 years because of actions by the council. We did go back last summer for an emergency measure that would allow us to get our pipeline started, asking the council for $11 million. They cut that in half. So we were able to get started, but still not at the level that we need to. My budget before the council right now asks for a $30 million investment so that we can hire 347 officers, help retain 300 officers, and continue our police cadet program where we're hiring DC residents. We have invested in a balanced approach to law enforcement. Not just law enforcement, but also over $59 million just last year in violence interruption programs. We've started a new agency, the Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, also to focus on violence prevention in our city. A thing that I think will structurally improve public safety in the city is for the city to get control of one of the federal agencies responsible for supervising youth. And some of those discussions we've begun to have. Finally, what I want to say is those things that have been upended by this pandemic, in-person services, courts, unit job training, as all of those services normalize, I know too, our public safety experience will improve.
The councilman.
People across our city feel unsafe in a way that we haven't since the 80s and 90s. In fact, we had the most homicides last year that we have had in our city since 2004. And the mayor's right. She has not had the support of the council. And the reason is because even as violent crime has gone up year after year, the mayor doesn't have a plan. And the council and the city need a plan. What I will do structurally first is follow the recommendation we got years ago from the Police Reform Commission that said that we need to focus our police on public safety and take the things that are not public safety related off of their plate so that they can be on the street, so that they can be in our community, so that they can respond more quickly. We're years behind on this right now. We don't need armed city employees responding to noise complaints, doing all of our traffic enforcement, being the first responders for mental health concerns. We need to create the agencies that can take care of those things so police can focus on public safety. I'm going to focus on violence prevention because we know that by the time the police show up and that yellow tape goes up, it is too late for people. We need to stop crime before it happens, and I have a plan for that. Instead of blaming everybody else, as the mayor does, the council, the courts, the prosecutors, I'm going to work with our prosecutors or meet with them on a recurring basis to understand what cases they're not prosecuting and why, so that we can do better and we can close cases. We are going to create more resources for our young people who have seen violent crime, because seeing violent crime has a long-term traumatic impact on young people, and it perpetuates the cycle of violence. If we want to cut down violence, we have to focus there. But we also need to get serious about the underlying issues, the places like housing stability and education, where the mayor has not made progress after 8 years.
David, may I respond?
I think that the next question I'm going to ask is going to give you the exact response you were.
Okay, I just want to make sure that when my name is called, which it has been throughout the night, I have an opportunity to respond.
You certainly shall. I had to figure this one would have, as a known area of divergence, I built in a rebuttal for everybody. I wanted to ask and to encourage this as an opportunity to discuss a little more in detail. This community in Northeast and Riggs Park, especially, often is concerned about areas of violence, such as along the Kennedy Street corridor. So what would you do in your first 100 days to help improve public safety in that space? And Mayor Bowser, this will go to you, as you were mentioning.
About Kennedy Street or Lamond-Riggs?
The Kennedy Street corridor.
Okay, so if you don't mind, I want to start with Lamond-Riggs and North Michigan Park, because I know the people living there too want to make sure that their neighborhoods are safe. When I'm in the community, I know they're very actively engaged with the lieutenant or the commander for the area. They want to see police. They want to see police that are walking. They want to see police that are stopping by and police that know them. We also have historically dealt with some neighborhood or crew violence. Some of it, knock on wood, some of it has had to do with Kennedy Street in years past. But we make sure that not just the police, but our Deputy Mayor for Public Safety and Justice is working with the recreation center directors and working with the ANC commissioners, so that we're working with the families that need the help the most. And we've seen a lot of progress.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser. Mr. Butler.
We know that area on 6th and Kennedy and the subsequent streets have been plagued with crime for a number of years. But we also know that our police force, it's overburdened. We're doing 1.1 million hours of overtime. That's the equivalent, the amount of money we're paying for that overtime is equivalent to hiring an additional 500 police officers. In addition to that, our response times are slowed because of that. David, we need more police officers. And I say this to everyone watching, that the mayor and I will probably agree on this. We need additional police officers. Where I don't agree with her, that she should get another 4 years to try to execute this, when I believe she botched it over the last 8, because she didn't have a plan, and using those police officers to effectuate real community-based policing, where you're really walking the beat and you're learning the neighborhood, so you can learn when crime is afoot. We need additional police officers to keep the residents of this great city safe.
Councilman, I will go to you next, and then to the mayor for a rebuttal, as you've been directly mentioned in some of these responses.
Thank you. Look, I'm on Kennedy Street every single day because my youngest daughter is in daycare on Kennedy Street, and it has become the Wild West. So one of the things that you're going to see on Kennedy Street in my first 100 days is police engaging, walking around on the beat, not just sitting stationary. But more than police, you're going to see us deploy government resources and resources from the University of the District of Columbia so that we are reaching the folks who are engaged in bad activities and starting to get resources more directly to them. The last thing, and this is going to give people across our city a lot of hope, you're going to see a mayor with a real public safety plan. Police are part of a public safety initiative, but police alone are not a public safety plan. We need a plan to keep our city safe. I have a plan. I encourage folks to go to my website, robertfordc.com, and check out our public safety plan.
Thank you, Councilman. Mayor Bowser, your rebuttal.
It was so now I'm thinking back to the first statement. But when I hear people constantly talking about a plan, it usually means they don't have a record, and they don't have a record where they're actually funding or delivering services. And that's exactly what we've been able to do in Riggs Park and across Washington, D.C. And that is what we're going to keep on doing. So if your plan is just to do more of what we've been doing, then that's not really anything revolutionary or different. We have created an Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. We have created diversion programs that keep calls from going to 911 and making sure that people get the right care in the right place at the right time when they need it. And we have also been very focused on working with national experts on making sure violence intervention programs actually work for the citizens of the District of Columbia. So we're going to continue to fight this fight, just like we have done in previous years, to drive crime down.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser. The next question is going to be to you. We have been discussing public safety in terms of crime very heavily here. But I'd like to pivot and talk about pedestrian and biker safety. South Dakota cuts through both of the communities represented here this evening and is often a very busy thoroughfare that is sometimes difficult to cross. What would you do in the next administration to increase public safety, both throughout the city and in our little corner of the city as well?
Well, your corner of the city is very important, and you know how much traffic it carries that is local traffic, but a ton of commuter traffic, and oftentimes people commuting through the city from Maryland. And so I've mentioned already how I've worked to make Riggs Road and South Dakota Avenue safer by working with the community to fill in those ramps. Many people won't even remember that those ramps were there. There were speed ramps, but now there will be housing for new Ward 4 residents, and it's the new front yard of Food and Friends, which I was proud to help make happen. The budget that the council will approve tomorrow includes $200 million that will allow us to focus on our dangerous intersections and corridors. So all of the engineering fixes that we need to make our city safer are prioritized along that list. It also adds 100 new TCOs, or traffic control officers, where we can deploy to dangerous intersections and make sure that every school has a traffic control officer or a safety guard. We will also increase the hours of our safety guards at schools. So now they will be there 3 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the afternoon. This budget will also allow us to deploy speed protection devices. I hear quite a lot, and we know the long stretch of South Dakota Avenue allows people to get up really tremendous speeds. So deploying speed devices will help us better enforce our laws.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser. Mr. Butler?
David, I want to say this. I run about 6 to 8 miles daily across the city, and I can't tell you the number of times that I've almost lost my life by a distracted driver. We know that Vision Zero has been an absolute zero. It's been an abysmal failure all 5 years that it's been around. And we know that it's partly because it hasn't been fully funded. In addition, We need to do things like elevated pedestrian walks to ensure that we pedestrians are safe. We also need to ensure that we do things like around our schools. And as mayor, I will do this, where we have bump outs that will shorten the amount or distance that kids need to cross the crosswalks. In addition to that, pedestrian islands, protected bike lanes. We need to, and we should, and as mayor, we will have the most robust protected bike lane system in the country. We can be a model as the nation's capital of America for the rest of the country. And that's what we should be. We shouldn't see ghost bike after ghost bike being erected around the city because someone has lost their lives, either a cyclist or pedestrian. So we will do that. In addition, we must ensure, and you've talked about this early on, how will we work with our neighboring states? We will ensure that we work to do the hard stuff in democracy so that we can obtain reciprocity between Maryland and Virginia and punish those drivers that feel they can go willy-nilly through the city. They're going through the city with reckless abandon, killing people, injuring people, racking up thousands of tickets, and they cannot be punished. So we will ensure that we will work with our sister states to ensure that we adequately get reciprocity and punish those bad actors.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. To the councilman.
Thank you. As unfortunately too many people know, because they've had these experiences or seen people and know people who have, we are at a 14-year high for DC traffic deaths. And so we know that Mayor Bowser's Vision Zero is not working, and that is something that we see across the board. What I will do is make sure that we have bike lanes, protected bike lanes in as many places as possible. When we have plans that aren't working the way Vision Zero has not been working for years, we're going to go back to the drawing board and make necessary changes. Some of the necessary changes right now are infrastructure changes that are years overdue. People have lost their lives because we've been governing with slogans instead of real programs and policies. And let me correct something that Mayor Bowser said. She said, it sounds like I'm going to do what she's been doing. No, I'm going to do what she's been talking about doing, but has not been doing. The reason that the council continues to fund the Office of the Attorney General to do violence intervention is because Mayor Bowser has not been doing a good job. The reason that the council is now funding the Office of the Attorney General to do wage theft enforcement is because Mayor Bowser hasn't been doing it. So what we're going to do are the things the mayor has been talking about, except that we're going to execute it.
Mayor Bowser, you've been directly referenced. Would you like a rebuttal?
Yes, I think that the reason that the council has made some of the decisions that Mr. White just referred to is because they're playing politics with people's lives. Whenever you are separating between two executive functions, the office or the attorney general, it doesn't matter to the people of the District of Columbia. They don't care about how you move the boxes around or which politician you favor or which you want to punish. They want to make sure that the programs are working the best. And what I understand from talking to our violence interrupters and intervention programs, and what we feared would happen is that having, not a coordinated leader of these programs is problematic. So I don't want to get into which office is doing this or which is doing that with the political games. Not when we're talking about people's lives. I can't even deal with an assertion that is that political.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser. Our next area of discussion I've called a grab bag because our residents here have a lot of concerns that don't really fall in the same category. So these questions are coming from our residents, they just don't have a common theme. My first question in this category, we've seen the COVID-19 pandemic magnify a lot of issues surrounding childcare. So what are your long-term plans, especially once federal funding dries up, to ensure that childcare workers and educators are appropriately compensated? And how will those plans not increase the cost of childcare? And I will send this question to the councilman first.
Thank you for the question. In the second month of my first term, I convened a meeting of early childhood education providers in Petworth Library to start talking to them about this exact thing. How do we expand childcare for more folks in our city and raise the wages of workers who are doing incredibly difficult work? Right now, there are only enough early childhood education seats for about a third of the young people in the District of Columbia, and the educators who do some of the hardest work that happens in our city and some of the most important work are paid on average just a little bit above minimum wage. That doesn't allow them to take care of their families. That is why I worked with my colleague, Councilmember Vince Gray, and the rest of my colleagues on the council to pass the Birth to Three for All DC bill that puts the District of Columbia on the path to universal early childhood education and makes wages for our early childhood educators on par with our elementary school, with our public school teachers, so that we can create stability. We created many other resources in that bill. And last year, with the council, we worked together to create a funding pipeline to fund this bill. So we have made incredible progress. We are further ahead of the rest of the nation. And as mayor, I'm going to finish what I started as a brand new council member.
Thank you, council member. To the mayor.
Well, I think I've heard some exaggeration of one's record, because I know Vince Gray to be the leader on the council on issues related to Birth to Three and universal pre-K. And it has made a tremendous difference in our city. It is true that the marketplace for childcare is a complicated one, and we have worked very hard to infuse dollars and invest dollars in quality care, but in also creating more seats. And we can look back over the last 7 years, and we created an additional 7,000 seats. We're also looking to use our own facilities to make the provision of childcare less expensive, in much like some federal buildings that allow childcare providers to operate within those buildings. In the last several years, we've also created a new model for early education in the district. And that model is the early child care center. We opened one pre-K 3 to K at Stevens Elementary at the Military Road School. There will be a new one in Fort Lincoln at the Old Thurgood Marshall School, one at Minor, and also one at Old Randall Highlands. We've also invested in middle-class families who are trying to afford childcare and created a $1,000 child care tax credit for families who do not qualify for subsidized child care. We're going to keep pushing on this issue, because we know coming out of the pandemic, we've also learned more how we need to get more hours covered for our first responding families and single moms and people without traditional hours.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser. Mr. Butler.
Thank you, David. And I want to be clear on the question. The question is with regards to those parents being affected by COVID in a negative way. So I don't want to go off the rails here. We're going to ensure, one, that we identify those parents, be it single moms or whatever, that have been affected by COVID in a negative way, to ensure that, one, we partner with our federal partners to ensure that we get all of the available funds that can go to these parents. When those run out, what we're going to have to do, and I will do as mayor, is to ensure that we provide city subsidized childcare for them. It's crucially and vitally important, because I hear all around the city that frequently people are paying more for childcare than they're paying for rent or a mortgage. That can't be, because that's not what the pathway to being a middle-class citizen. That's not the pathway to thrive in this city. And that's certainly, not a fair shot, to use one of the mayor's slogan. That is a failing shot there. So we will ensure that they get childcare that's subsidized by the cities, that it's in our schools, that it's in, we form public-private partnerships with our universities to ensure it's there, and that and I will emphasize this again, dollars coming from federal dollars can be joined to ensure that they are not left behind once we identify those publics that have been hurt by COVID.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. Our next question is also is about home ownership. As we know, this is an important way to build generational wealth and deal with inequality, but rising prices also cause displacement. What will you do in your next administration to reconcile these competing interests? And Mr. Butler, this question goes to you first.
Thank you. I have shared with you all what I will do to focus on affordable housing. But in addition, we will ensure that those minority families that are in the district, Black and brown families, are looked at when it comes to home ownership, that we can ensure that city-based monies are backing mortgages, and that to give these demographics a fighting chance to stay within the city. What we also know, and in all fairness, is there are a limited number of homes in the city. And we know over the last 10 to 15 years, the price has increasingly become so high that it makes it unattainable by people who have performed well by ordinary metrics. So this is going to have to be something that is done on a case-by-case basis, where we determine what the person's income is, what subsidies they qualify for, and to give them a fighting chance to stay in the city. So that may be linking them up with a realtor and a mortgage company that fits their budget and where they can live in the city. But it's not going to be easy. It's going to come with a lot of hard work. Why is it not going to be easy? Because we've gone so far in the opposite directions, because our leadership has cozied up with private developers and has driven everything sky high. We know the median income of a home in DC now is around $500,000. That's $500,000. And if you want something really nice, you're going to have to move over where the mayor lives, in the North Quarter Estates.
Mayor Bowser, the question to you about home ownership.
Sure. Well, Mr. Butler, I don't live in the North Quarter Estates, but that's beside the point. I can tell you, I grew up in North Michigan Park at 7th and Crittenden. I lived for 16 years on Oglethorpe Street Northeast, right across from the Riggs LaSalle School. And I'm very proud now because of hard work and all of the values that my parents taught me. I live in a house with my daughter that I bought on my own. So I'm proud of that progress, and I dare say the people in Riggs Park in North Michigan Park, they're proud of that progress too. But they're also proud that I use my time in office to fight for them. And we started a program that allows people to be able to age better in place in their homes. My parents are in their 80s. They live in the home that they raised us in. And seniors just like them are taking advantage of the Safe at Home program. We have served over, I think, 2,400 seniors that are getting small grants to make their homes safer for them. We've also invested in tax breaks for senior homeowners. When I started as the council member, I increased the income eligibility for people who qualify for the half off the tax bill senior tax credit. But I also moved the annual tax cap from 10% to 5% for seniors. And this year it'll go down to 2%. So no senior will ever experience a tax bill that's greater than a 2% increase. We proposed also a suite of legacy initiatives, a $10 million Black home ownership fund and a legal services fund that will help families transfer their wealth and better estate plan to make sure that these houses can stay in their families and be protected and invested in.
Thank you, Mayor Basil.
Thank you.
To Councilman White.
Thank you. Home ownership in DC skipped a generation in my family, unfortunately. And so I'm blessed to be able to own a home, but my dad and his entire generation weren't able to do that. I want to make sure people across our city can do what my wife and I have been able to do, but we recognize that it is becoming impossible. A starter home in the District of Columbia that just over a decade ago would have cost you $250,000 $300,000 will cost you $600,000, $800,000 now. And people just don't have that because the cost of housing has not risen with wages. So the first thing that we have to do is continue to keep an eye on the home purchase assistance program and make sure that we're using the maximum leverage of that program to create opportunities for DC residents to purchase. We continue to see people when it's time for them to buy or when their family grows that they are not able to find a place in the District of Columbia, which is why we have a smaller middle class than almost anywhere else in the nation. But we also know it doesn't matter if we create programs for people to purchase homes if we don't fix education and employment in our city. If you look at what is happening, particularly in communities of color with education and with employment, you realize that we have missed the mark for people in the best times that our city has ever seen. In our schools, 60% of Black and brown students are behind grade level in elementary school. How are they going to become homeowners if we don't fix education? We see that we have doubled the unemployment in the Black community that we do on average across the city. If we don't pay particular attention to this issue, then it doesn't matter if we have programs like HPAP. So we've got to create the purchase programs, but we have got to focus on the underlying issues in the way that we haven't.
Thank you, Council Member. And I'm glad you brought up education. That will be the subject of our next question. As you all know, we have a wonderful network of community-based organizations and nonprofits that support schools and students in the city. Yet many of them face complex grant applications, burdensome insurance requirements, changing volunteer policies, and a number of other things that make it challenging to work with and support students in city schools. What would you do in your next administration to make it easier for community-based organizations to support students? I believe it is the mayor's turn to answer this first.
Well, we, of course, are grateful to nonprofits who are working to support our students. We have a huge commitment, especially as we welcome our students back and help them catch up. A big investment, some of it assisted by the American Rescue Plan, but most of it by DC taxpayers, is on high dose tutoring. So we're really looking to a lot of our partners to make sure that we can get that tutoring accomplished with teachers, but also with reading and other academic partners. The biggest thing that we can do is remove some of the red tape. But I caution you, we don't cut corners when it comes to kids. And so making sure that people are properly vetted when they work with our children is important. I think that there are some things when we have regular, especially parental volunteers in the buildings, streamlining those processes will help. More learning from the pandemic about how our residents and our partners are using technology to interact with us gives us an opportunity in this space, I think, to leverage technology to more quickly vet people, have more streamlined sign-in processes. So we always know who's in our buildings and who's working with our kids, but leveraging technology will help us improve that process.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser. It seems like we might have lost the visual of the timer. Is that correct for y'all?
Yes. I don't see, oh, I see a box. I don't see a timer.
I've been informed it's coming back, but I will also try to keep y'all posted here.
Okay.
Mr. Butler, let's have you proceed here.
Okay, thank you. And it's extremely important that when we're dealing with our CBOs, that we make it where they can enjoy doing business in the city. I will agree with the mayor with regards to that we do need to proceed with caution when we're dealing with our kids. That's vitally important. You know, we don't want to overstep, you know, someone being certified as a mandated child reporter, et cetera, et cetera. But at the same time, we don't want to dissuade these CBOs from doing good and effective businesses in our city. So what we will do and what I will do as mayor in every process in running this great city is to ensure that we can encourage businesses and CBOs to do business in the city. So where it is possible for us to streamline, and that requires extensive auditing, I will ensure that an audit is done over every entire department in the city so that we know where we're running efficiently, we know where we're running inefficiently. Where we're running inefficiently, we will ensure that we will streamline the process. And certainly, I do want to add again, but it will never be done at the peril of our kids.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. Councilman White.
Thank you. We absolutely have to keep focus on the safety of our young people. We can never take our eye off the ball when it comes to that. We have to vet people properly, but we can, as Mayor Bowser said, and we need to cut the red tape, cut as much as we can, use technology to streamline these processes. We really are behind the ball in getting services to our young people, whether it has to do with tutoring or other interventions like literacy, where the District of Columbia is woefully behind. We have got to get resources to students. As mayor, I'm going to focus on making our government more efficient. We have not in too long focused on the efficiency and operations of government. And we see that play out in so many ways, from leaves not getting collected to issues at Department of Employment Services to vetting issues. And so it is time for us to have a mayor who is focused on the operations of government in a way that we haven't been in just too long. And we're seeing the wheels come off in many ways.
Thank you, Councilman. It seems that our timer has returned to us. For the following questions, however, as we approach the end of our evening, I'm going to drop our answer time back to a minute, and we'll do a few lightning questions. So to Mr. Butler first, from one of our attendees live here, can you talk more about a question I believe you referenced earlier? What is the district doing or not doing to collect fines from Maryland and Virginia residents for traffic violations?
Well, right now, your license cannot technically be suspended in Maryland and Virginia for fines accrued in DC. So that is to say there is not reciprocity between the two states. And if we get reciprocity, we can ensure that we don't have drivers from Maryland and Virginia racking up thousands and thousands of dollars of fines and speeding through the district and getting, speed camera fines and not feeling that there will be no, rebuke of their reckless actions. That is causing significant problems in the form of deaths in DC from pedestrian and cyclists. As your mayor, one thing that I will do when it comes to public safety, I will take it as one of the highest priorities. I share it with you early on how I use the streets to run in every day when I'm exercising. And it's important to me and that pedestrians, runners, cyclists are all safe. So I ensure that there's reciprocity between Maryland and Virginia.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. To the councilman.
Thank you. I start in the same place, reciprocity with Maryland and Virginia. We have too many unpaid violations coming from Maryland and Virginia. We all have seen the data and the amount of money owed to the District of Columbia by those out-of-state drivers. Now, we also need to deploy more folks who are doing booting because at the end of the day, if these Maryland and Virginia drivers are getting their cars booted, they're going to pay those fines. And if they know that this is something that is likely to happen, they're going to be more likely to pay without the booting. So we have got to be more aggressive in making sure that we're collecting the fines, but we also need to work with the elected officials in Maryland and Virginia to develop reciprocity. So because there are so many folks coming in during the day and in the evenings from Maryland and Virginia, and we are paying their share when they don't pay the ticket.
And to the mayor.
I agree with a lot of what my colleagues here have already said. I will say that I have asked the Transportation Planning Board, that's part of the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, to advance and do some tough work. I've asked them a couple of times to work on issues that I know are regional, but also affect us. One was to challenge the member jurisdictions each to have a housing goal for the jurisdiction like we set. We set ours by planning area. We haven't been able to get, a goal for each jurisdiction. The other, another was having COG pass a resolution saying that it supports this ticket reciprocity issue. I have to check back. I'm not sure if that's gotten through the COG yet, but that would be important. And I will continue to talk to the governors in our conversations. We're gonna, well, I'm out of time, but I can come back to that.
Thank you for respecting our timer, Mayor Bowser.
You're
We're going to try and squeeze in two last questions.
I know.
Opening statement, or excuse me, closing statements tonight. Our first question, live from the chat here, is could you talk a little bit about entrepreneurship and sports for small businesses, especially as the city gentrifies and changes? That would be to the councilman first.
Thank you. There are a couple things. First, just a couple of years ago, there were 3 Black-owned small businesses in Ward 8 that came to my office for assistance. They said, look, our building is going to be sold and we're going to be displaced. And we've seen that happen to too many local businesses. So I used the council and DC government to pass a bill and to get funding to help those businesses remain where they are and buy their buildings. So redevelopment will still likely happen, but they will be in the driver's seat. And that is something we have to continue to duplicate across the city. But we also have to look at the organization like the DC Economic Partnership, an entity that attracts businesses to DC. We need a very similar entity that works with local businesses once they are here to help keep them open, to help get them paid more quickly, to help them expand and access resources.
Thank you, Councilman. Mr. Butler.
As mayor of the city, I will ensure that every new development that comes in our city has a space allocated for a minority-owned business. It's simple as that. I'm not going to give you circumloquacious political talk. Every new development will have a new space allocated for a minority Black and brown business. We can work that out with developers. That's the hard stuff to do. We give them all of these tax breaks for horizontal development. It's time we start getting something in return. In addition to that, we know that our CBEs, we're giving these grants, but 90% of them are not going to Black and brown businesses. So the reality is we need the proper oversight to make sure that Black and brown businesses are getting their fair share of play in the city as well. But I can assure you, all new development will have the proper allocation for Black and brown businesses.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. To the mayor.
Thank you. I'm really proud of the work that we've done with our small business community. When I became mayor, the city was spending about $300 million with our CBE community. And just last year, we spent over $1 billion with our CBE community. So we know that businesses are starting here, growing here, and hiring DC residents. I'm also proud of the work we did during this pandemic. As I mentioned, a lot of folks just got completely wiped out by it. So a lot of our small businesses that were in the restaurant industry or entertainment or other retailers were able to take advantage of the emergency funds that we put out. We have also been focused on how to help Black and brown businesses buy their buildings. And the Commercial Acquisition Fund is just one such example of how we've been able to let them turn their rent payments into equity.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser. I think we have time for one last question here before we head to closing statements. And I would like to end on a bit of a more thoughtful note. One of our residents asked essentially, public service is complicated. There are lots of challenges and barriers to success. So 4 years from now, how would you define success for a coming term as mayor? And we will close by going to the councilman first here.
I've defined success in my first term as mayor the same way I defined it in my first term as council member. I'm going to set very clear and transparent goals. I'm going to set metrics so that you know as well as I know how well we are making out on those goals. When I was first elected, I published a transition plan that said every single thing I plan to do in my first term so that people could hold me accountable if I ran for reelection. When I ran for reelection as a council member, I had accomplished almost every single thing in that transition plan. That is the level of focus, transparency, and problem solving that I'm going to bring to the office of mayor. Yes, we have a lot of money right now, but having a lot of money, spending a lot of money, and solving problems are different things. Solving problems requires us to work with others. It requires us to set clear, specific goals. That's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to pull our city together around our most urgent issues of safety, education, and affordable housing.
Thank you, Council Member. To Mr. Butler.
The people will be the best judge of the job I do as mayor. But if I could be reflective, I would look at if people feel safe in their city. Because if you feel safe in your city, you're going to be happy in your city and want to stay in your city. If we can assure that people can afford to live in our city. Right now, we know of all these major US cities that's facing gentrification, DC has displaced more Black and brown families than any other major US city in the country. If we can reverse that trend, if we can find long-term supportive housing with a robust wraparound service for our homeless situation, that would make me happier beyond words. If we can ensure that every DC school is making grades, there's continuity amongst the schools, our students feel safe, passing along to school, and our teachers feel safe teaching. That would be success to me.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. And lastly, to the mayor.
When I look back at my time in service, I judge myself on if I kept my promises. I judge myself on if I have made my residents proud. I promised when I ran for mayor in 2014 that I would restore pride in DC government and that I would be a leader that residents could look to and be proud of. I'm a woman of my word. I speak clearly. I don't waffle. I do not equivocate. I get the information and I lead. And so I'm very proud of that. The other thing that you know that I will wake up every single day looking for the answers. I may not know them all, but I will surround myself with people who are experts in the field. But at the end of the day, it's my job to make the best decision for the most people. And I won't go back as a leader. I won't look to old ways of doing things and try to tell you that that's the way to improve education.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser. It is now time to end our conversation this evening. I know that I, for one, have quite enjoyed the discussion and had some great substantive answers to the questions of the residents of North Michigan Park and Lamond-Riggs. Since you were not here for our intro, I will review that we are going to give each candidate 2 minutes to make a closing statement, their final message to voters in these jurisdictions. And we will start with you. Mayor Bowser.
Well, David, thank you. You've done a great job. I'm sorry that I couldn't join you from the beginning, but I want to thank all of the residents who are watching and commit to you that we are going to continue to focus on big things for your neighborhood and for the entire city. As I've mentioned, we've worked together now almost 20 years. We developed a plan together, and every day and every year that plan is being implemented. And I look forward to being with you for the opening of new housing in Riggs Park, the new Lamond-Riggs Library, and more retail coming to Fort Totten. We've also kept our promises across all 8 wards. I'm proud to be the mayor to deliver a new hospital that's going to be at the St. Elizabeth's campus, as well as the first new grocery in Ward 7 and Ward 8, using the Food Access Fund that we created. I'm also going to tell you the truth when it comes to public safety. The truth is this pandemic has upended a lot of our systems, not just in DC, but across the country, where we have seen seen increased violence, we've seen increased traffic deaths, and we've even seen increased suicide and fentanyl deaths. So I'm going to pledge to you, just like we worked together through this pandemic, that we're going to work together on the comeback to bring all of our systems together. But I've got to tell you when we need what we need, and we need the officers that we need. We don't need equivocating. We need to be able to hire to get our force strength up to protect our neighborhoods. But at the same time, we're going to make sure that we don't have pie in the sky jobs plans, but real ones that deliver real jobs for DC residents, like our DC Infrastructure Academy. So now is not the time for untested leadership. I'm asking for your vote in the Democratic primary by June 21st.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser. Mr. Butler.
I believe that's the wrong order, and I say that with all due respect, David. It was supposed to be Robert next. I went first with my opening.
We're going in the reverse order.
Okay, you indicated earlier on that it was Robert would go first on his closing.
I'm happy to let the councilman speak now if you'd like.
Thank you, David. I want to thank you for moderating. I want to thank our residents for being here. Here's the deal. People who were struggling in our city 8 years ago are still struggling now. This is still a city of have and have-nots, despite 8 years of record-setting budgets. Whatever the mayor has not accomplished in 8 years with record-setting budgets, she will not accomplish in 12 years. This is a time for a problem solver as mayor. The status quo simply is not working for too many people. We need somebody who can use this time, this moment in time, to make sure that the money that we have in our government is reaching the people who have been struggling. That requires a mayor who is grounded in that struggle, a mayor who understands government from every angle. There is no one running for mayor who has had more experience in every branch of government than I've had. I know the potential of our government. I know what we can do if we have the right leader in this moment in time. This is a time for new leadership. Our city is moving in the wrong direction. The issues with public safety didn't start with the pandemic. They started years before, and our mayor still has no plan. I have a plan on public safety. She will criticize my jobs guarantee program as pie in the sky, but guess what? This is a time for a mayor with bold ideas, because again, the status quo is working for some people, but it's not working for most of us. And it's not working for folks like my family and too many of the families listening right now. Now is the time for someone who believes that every single student can achieve in our schools, and that we need a school system that works for every parent, not just parents in good neighborhoods, but parents in every single neighborhood of our city. That is the level of seriousness, the level of urgency that I will bring to this office. That's what we need right now. I'm Robert White. I'm asking for your vote by June 21st. I'm ready to be the next mayor of our great city.
Thank you, Councilman. Mr. Butler.
David, thank you so much. And Barbara, Carmen, to all of those of the Lamond-Riggs, those watching at home, those that we will watch later on, those at North Michigan Park, I thank you all so much. This is the greatest honor of my life, a privilege, a pleasure, and an honor to be able to run for mayor of the great District of Columbia. Folks, you have a great decision to make. You have heard from career politicians that have been there to do a number of things over the year. And the mayor spoke to the councilman who's on here, and she talked about that. He has the same power to do and similar power to do what she has to do. You need to ask yourself, if they had a plan, a robust plan to turn this city around after 6 years on council, after 8 years as mayor, you should all know about it. You need to ask yourself, if she has failed to keep this city safe in the last 8 years, with crime at a 20-year high, with 4 more years, would be at 25 years high of violent crime and homicides. And ask yourself, would a council member who has stripped our public safety budget, who police do not view him as a friend of the police, who has essentially voted to defund the police. It is time, folks, we get rid of these career politicians and get someone whose vision is not stifled by what they can't do, but by what they can do. I'm asking that you make a change on June 21st and vote Butler for mayor, You can find more at my website at butler4dc.com. I have worked in this city. I have been in the trenches. As your mayor, I will continuously fight for fairness and equality like I've done the majority of my adult life. I am asking for your vote on June 21st. God bless you, and God forever bless the soon-to-be 51st state, the great District of Columbia.
Thank you, Mr. Butler, and to all of our candidates for joining us this evening. I am very passionate about civic education, and it has been my pleasure to moderate this evening, so I appreciate all of your attendance. I'd also like to thank all of our attendees and residents of the North Michigan Park and Lamond-Riggs communities for joining us this evening. I will now turn it over to the presidents of our associations for some closing words. Looks like Carmen's going to speak first.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. I'd like to thank all of the candidates for their remarks for this evening. I'd like to thank the residents of Lamond-Riggs and North Michigan Park for attending. As I stated in my opening remarks, we must vote. We must vote for the person we choose to lead us. With that being said, there are some important dates coming up. Mail-in ballots begin on May the 27th. Early voting starts on June the 10th. The election day is Tuesday, June the 21st. Please, everyone, come out and vote. Equally important, if you're already a member of your civic or citizen association, or if you're not, please join. It is your civic duty to help the residents and your community. Thank you, and Barbara, you're up.
Thank you so much, Carmen. In closing, I do want to thank David. He did an excellent job as our moderator. I also want to thank Tisha Cockrell. She has managed our YouTube. And I want to thank Angie, who is our communication director, for managing our virtual meeting. On behalf of LRCA and the Lamond-Riggs community, we want to thank Mayor Muriel Bowser, at-large council member Robert White, and Mr. Butler for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us, answer questions and concerns of this community. I want to thank all the participants that took time out of their schedule to join us. And so the last thing I will say is please vote.